Danny Manausa. Welcome to the podcast. You have to hold up the mic and actually talk into it. Is it on? It is on.
It is an honor to be here. Thank you.
You are so ridiculous, Danny. Why'd you start running?
I don't remember. I started running before I can remember not running. My mom was a serious runner, and I think I started running with her before I have memories.
What age do you think you started, like young?
I know she used to take us out to the Godby track, and literally, I think she put our playpen in the middle so she could run laps while we were being watched.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. How was she long distance in terms of marathon or ultras, or was she a 5K, or she...
She mostly did 5 and 10Ks, but she did do a marathon or perhaps more than one. I know she did one for sure.
And then in high school, you had other sports, though, that you did.
Correct. Yeah, running was never my primary sport. It was always ancillary. Football was my main sport, and so track was something we did to stay in shape or get speed.
I was going to say, stay in shape or get speed. Usually when you're hearing football, it's going to be things like 100, field events, maybe 400. Where did the long distance start coming into play for you?
I've always run to relax. Even when I played football, even though my sport was the 330 hurdles, because back then we used yards because we had not lost the metric war. So I did the 330 hurdles.
Everybody's going to do the math and figure out how old you are.
On the asphalt track, it wasn't cinder block.
Drop the 1, carry the 2.
Yeah. Back when we were still a country of yards, not meters. But anyway, I still ran distance
Before communism took over the world.
we completely lost that war. I don't know how that happened, but we definitely lost the yards. But the running far was always something I did to relax. Wasn't very good at it, but I just did it. It was a nice way to get out and get in my own space.
And when you graduated college, that was the thing that stuck for you? Did you take a break from it ever?
I've never really stopped running. Now, I wasn't entering races or anything of that nature, but I've always run to relax.
When did the racing start for you again? When did the competitive Danny come back?
It wasn't till the competitive Danny's back forced him out of retirement of basketball, or forced him into retirement. And when I was in my mid-40s,
you couldn't play basketball anymore.
I could not play it the way I wanted to play it.
Which was?
Full speed.
Mediocre at best.
Oh, wildly mediocre. No, mediocre would be my benchmark on a great day, but I love basketball. I started playing it in college, pick up, and just never stopped till my mid-40s. But if I couldn't play
your
full
son's
speed,
playing, do you have some influence to your sons playing basketball?
No, my first
They just got into it.
No, my first two did not play basketball in high school.
Just Jack.
Just Jack, just the youngest.
Oh.
Yeah. So no, the only rule in our house was they had to do something. Whatever sport it was up to them. And I think that's why the first two picked lacrosse, because I did not know it was a sport and could not lend any expertise. So I think that's where that sport came
Lacrosse?
from. Yes.
You thought it was just a language that they'd communicate?
I thought
bro.
lacrosse was a shirt in the 80s. I did not know it was a sport until they started playing it. But it's a wonderful sport.
Yeah.
I wish they had it in the South when I was a kid. I would have played it.
Yeah. What is the biggest thing, before we get into some of the nerd moments with you? What is so far the biggest thing running has taught you?
Oh gosh, it's incremental success. I learned this at a young age, and same with swimming. If you can just show up and get a little bit better each day, if you keep showing up, you can improve vastly over a period of time.
Even more than other sports.
I think that's true in all sports, but I do think that, in basketball, if you keep showing up, you might not get taller each day. You might be a better shot.
Well, there's also I feel like there's other players that are involved too, right? So there's things to disguise maybe stalling in success, or disguise growth if you have players that are a lot better that are helping you on court type of thing. That's just my hypotheses, because I've been a part of more team sports, and it's been tougher for me to, get addicted to the process, because there's other factors at play. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Well, it's much more quantifiable. If you're running or lifting or swimming, if you get better a little bit, you can look at the clock or look at the weights and see you've got better.
Right.
Whereas in football, you might have gotten better that game, but the guy next to you did awful, so you got beat. So you don't walk out with that dopamine of, yeah, I did better. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So I came into running 5 months ago, and you were already one of my clients, but you became one of my training partners as well, unfortunately for you. And you sort of, we were training for Palace, and you took me under your wing a little bit and helped me a lot with this race, which is what inspired some of the things I want to talk about. And the first thing is kind of best practices for 5K, because not only was the training and the way you approach training, I know all inspired by Gary, our running coach, but not only is the training and the approach to training something that's really valuable or was really helpful for me, but also just the strategy of the 5K in general. I think a lot of people mess it up or don't see it correctly or just have no strategy. The strategy is no strategy. And so for you, best practices when it comes to training for and then preparing for race day 5K, I'd love for you to share some of that with the people listening, because it was very helpful for me.
Well, I think the number one thing that I was doing wrong as far as preparing for the 5K is I was not running enough difficult threshold sessions. I wasn't running enough hard 6 or 8 mile sessions. I was doing speed work at the track, which was great. I was doing long runs, but I wasn't doing those runs where you really had to grit it out for blocks of miles. And
What does that threshold session help you with the most? The last mile?
I think it's all the above. But I think the problem with the 5Ks in the past is you have your I had my foot speed. I went out like I wanted to. Then once that pain came, I didn't have the training to push through that pain, because intervals, it's great for speed and great for a lot of things, but being able to, your body to handle pain for a quantifiable amount of time, that's where the threshold running helps.
Yeah, so give me an idea as to, for you, kind of what the speed work, what the threshold, and what the long run look like for you. Because I also think people hear speed work, threshold and long run, and everyone's thinking 100 different things depending on their level of training, what they're training for, that kind of thing. So for the 5K, what did each of those look like for you?
Well, we are blessed in Tallahassee to have Golf Wins Track Club.
100%.
We have 2, quote, speed sessions a week coached by a world-class coach, and he lets all of us come out there, even though we do not have world-class talent, and get what I consider to be a great middle distance speed workout. It adds up to 4,800 meters, roughly a 5K. And it's always a component of, it could be 3 by 1, it could be 6 by half miles, it could be 12 400s, but at the end of the day, it adds up to roughly a 5K. And so that's a great way to train for either a 5 or 10K.
And that's what that speed work looks like.
Correct. And because you're going to go sub 5K speed, it gets you used to that speed, it gets you used to that lactic threshold and heart rate and whatnot.
But you have some rest.
But you do have rest. So it's great for people who need speed, and all of us need speed. You got to be able to run faster than your goal, so when you're running your goal, your body doesn't freak out. Although it still does freak out, but this makes the freak out a little less freaky. Yes.
A little bit freaky. A
little less freaky, yeah.
A controlled freak.
Yes. You want to get in the controlled freak zone. Garmin's coming out with that.
Oh my God. Garmin, the new watch. When it comes to threshold work and your long runs, what does that look like?
And that's where I, once again, have to just thank Gary.
I've messed all of these up, by the way. Like, I've misinterpreted and messed all of these up.
Well, the threshold workout, the best one is that Gary had us entering 10Ks, but doing them instead of racing a 10K, doing them in 2 mile blocks, perhaps the first 2 miles easier than race pace.
Yep.
And then easing into race pace, and then trying to hit 5K pace on the last 2 miles. It was just a great way to get used to grinding out miles and getting faster as you go as a cut down.
Yeah, and a consistent negative split.
Right.
That was another one of the sessions you suggested to me, was 2 mile repeats you get like 90 seconds rest in between each 2 miles, and every single mile needs to be faster, but especially each 2 mile cut down block needs to be faster than the first one.
That's one of my favorite workouts. It's from Jack Daniels' book.
Yeah.
Not the bottle, but the book. And the it's you
Not to be confused with.
and the key is to not check your watch during the workout. And the rule is it doesn't matter what your pace is. If each mile is not faster, it's a failure.
Yeah.
And it teaches you, or really taught me.
Or I suppose perceived faster if you have a lot of hills going on.
Yeah, in Tallahassee, it's hard to get that. But in theory, you want your
right
equivalent speed to be cutting down. So
because your RPE is going up. Yeah.
You want to get your body used to cutting down and knowing your body. It's a great way not to go out too fast. And it's a great way to get used to just kicking at the end.
Yeah. And your long run, what is during 5K training, what does the long run look like for you?
It's just easy. It should be at talking speed, and based on the time of year is how far we go. Now that being said, if you're running the spring 5 and 10Ks, the groups that run really far in the fall, I found that was a great way to get some endurance in without running threshold.
What do you mean?
There's just a lot of people run out at Bradley's once it gets cold, and it's endless trails with many, many runners, and you're running far, and it's a great group, and you get used to long distance, so that when you're doing threshold runs come spring, you have that built-in strength.
Yeah, you have the endurance and the
Right.
time on feet. When you're doing a long run, you're not worried about pace. Is there ever a pace or an RP that's too much? Is there a mileage that's too much where you're just like, man, I'm cutting it at 10 or I'm cutting it at 15? Or when it comes to 5K training?
With me, I have to be able to talk. If
Yep.
I'm not talking, in my humble opinion, is for a long, easy run.
Yeah, you
that
do
means-
love to hear the sound of your own
That
voice.
is right. Even, especially when I'm running by myself. If I
You know, another thing, Danny, is
I mean, everything I've read says the long run, you're supposed to be able to hold a conversation, to let the recovery flow. I don't think the distance is that important. It's based upon your training. I think a rule of thumb is 25% of your weekly volume is a good number.
okay. I didn't know that to be the approach for the long run.
Once again, that's Mr. Jack Daniels' recommendation, is trying to keep, if you're running X amount of miles per week, your long run should be hovering around 25%. Because I do a good bit of training, cross training, though, my long run typically is more like 30% of my week.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of cross training, before we go back to the 5K, you started working out with me. It took you forever to come in and see me, and then you came in tail between your legs.
I came in with my hamstring and calves between.
You're limping, he was limping. He was like, "So I'm desperate."
Yes,
which is why I'm seeing you right now.
100%. I had no other options.
No other options. I've exhausted all other areas. Seriously though, what made you come in, and how do you think, because you did come in quite a bit before the 5K, how do you think that's impacted your training for the 5K, and then the training since we're in mile training now for anybody that doesn't know? When you first came in, what was going on, and what's happened since?
You know, for roughly about 3 years, I was just chronically injured, whether a nagging injury or a can't run or a can't walk without pain, typically hamstrings or calves. And I came in because I had run out of Google solutions. It wasn't a stretching problem. It wasn't flexibility. It was a lack of strength.
What was the stuff that came up the most when you were looking into and like researching? Like what's the stuff, what's the answers you get the most? Because I've done my own Google research and I'm like, this is wildly unhelpful. You know, even me trying to see what other people are seeing, but what were you getting back?
The misinformation I got that hurt me the most was kind of a 1980s theory of, if your calf is hurting, that means your calf is weak. That means do 5,000 toe raisers.
Right.
If your hamstring is hurting, that means your hamstring's weak. Do all these hamstring exercises. And that's what I was doing. And it wasn't, I have to give credit where credit is due. It wasn't until I came in here that you said, no, you're your calf is hurting or your hamstring's hurting because the other muscles are not doing their job. And
Yeah.
you gave the good example of a class project.
I did.
I like that. You dumbed it down for me. You know, the other body
You
parts
are an idiot,
weren't.
so.
Yes, so thank you. That's hurtful.
Sorry, keep going. Keep complimenting me now.
But it made something I could understand that the glutes and the whatever weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and that was putting too much pressure on the other muscle groups. So therefore, they were fatigued and getting hurt. And again, giving credit where credit is due. I have not been, knock on wood, I've not been injured since I've been coming here.
Yeah. How is the strength training? Do you see any, other than, injury mitigation, do you see any benefits, and obviously the ability to do the training blocks, do you see any other benefits in your runs in and of themselves? Do you see any drawbacks? Do you see what's been going on with that?
Well, I mean, the only drawbacks are my legs are a little bit fatigued and sore, but that's part of it. But that can also, for races, it did not impact the race because we tapered down before the race. So if anything, that's a positive, because if you can train through soreness, the race not being sore seemed easier. I can definitely feel my form is better, and not having to back off when you're feeling a hamstring get sore or a calf get tight. It lets me focus more on the race or the run.
Right.
Than listening to my hamstring complain.
Right, you're not as concerned. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, also, Gary even noticed you, what was it, the other week, where he was like, dude's coming in looking strong. Like you were holding, it was the last 400 in our block that we were doing. And you came in and ran like a 77 or something. It was crazy. And Gary's like, he looks like he's not hurting.
I was hurting, but my legs were not hurting.
Your form was maintained the whole time.
No, it's definitely, I think strengthening the other muscles has improved my form, even as far as posture, doing all those lovely side bend things you have us do.
Oh my God, you hate them so much.
But it keeps your upper body where it needs to be and breathing better while running.
Yeah. I mean, the core stuff, it's many things. I think that some ways people experience tightness because the body is actually setting up protective mechanisms. It doesn't mean, it's not you need to stretch more. It actually means you need to get stronger in deeper ranges of motion, because the body sets up these protective mechanisms that creates the sensation of tightness, because it's not safe going in those deep ranges of motion because it's weak. The muscle, that area is weak, or there's instabilities present. 2, because there's underlying instabilities present, right? You have these compensatory patterns, that occur, which is why you'll feel, pain in like the hamstring or the calf or things like that. But then it's also understanding too that there's a synergy between upper and lower with the core, that running is like a full body exercise. And even though you hate them and they suck to do, those core exercises transfer very well in terms of not only just creating better posture when you're running and better form and mechanics when you're running, but it helps with that upper-lower flow. They call them anterior and posterior oblique slings, which is this nerdy way. Yeah, it basically just means lines of pull in the body as they move functionally. But when it comes to race day, right, we're doing the 5K. We were training for the 5K. I had all of you guys helping me train, which was so awesome. I would not have shown up and done a good 5K. Just 1, because of the training would have been off, and 2, because I think that you guys had much more realistic, hopeful time goals for me, whereas I was like very conservative with my time goals, On race day, you gave me a breakdown. I ought to read it, but I want you to explain it first.
Well, I mean, it comes back to every world record farther than a 800 has been a negative split. If you look at all the races in town where they, like springtime, where they show the halfway mark, that all the fast runners, the folks way up front, they're all running negative splits, even with the hills. And so the whole key to me is running that 5K in a solid negative split. And without using your watch, and that's where training comes in. It's all those sessions of those 2 mile blocks that it's in your DNA to run a negative split.
Why not using your watch?
Once again,
I feel like there's so much back and forth with people on watch versus no watch.
Again, I think Gary one time told me no one beats a watch. And the problem with using a watch too much, I think in a short distance run like a 5K as opposed to a marathon where perhaps you need to use it, is every day is different. Humidity, wind, heat, cold, topography. Mm-hmm. And if you have an artificial time telling you what to do and not your body, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Just for me. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody has different pacing strategies. But I know for me, if I go out too fast and start fading, it's just not enjoyable. It's not fun. And I've never
And if you don't
well.
practice that in your runs, you don't learn to listen to your body and respond and understand when it really can push and when it needs to back up. And you show up to race day, basically you're a slave to your watch because you haven't practiced it otherwise. And for me, I found that the watch kind of will confirm my own self-limiting beliefs. Like the last 2 cut downs we've done, our runs on Saturday, I had those intervals set up where you can't see your pace. I can't see my heart rate. You just have to go. And I've had some of the best cut downs I've ever had because I just went off of feel. And I think if I had looked at my watch and I had seen my first mile time, or if I'd seen, where my heart rate was, or I would have slowed up. And I don't think I would have gotten the times I had because I would have thought, oh, whoa, this is like I'm going out too hot, or oh, maybe I am going out too fast, or whatever. When in reality, like I was just fine because I was going based off of feel. I want to read this email that you sent me. Do you need a lawyer present? The fear in your eyes. The fear. It's the Palace thoughts, plans, hopes, aspirations, fears, etc. email that you sent me to plan and strategize for the Palace 5K. And it's both hilarious and also extremely helpful. So it started with, okay, biatch, which is literally a BIACHE. I don't think that's how you spell it, but that's fine. Anyways, you told me about the course map and kind of where everything goes in terms of the course. You thought I could break a 20, which was, I didn't break a 20. My goal was to break a 21, and I did break. I got a 20:33, so I was very happy with that. But you said the biggest thing for me is not to be married to a time. Rather, it's to run the 5K the way it's meant to be run. Cut down. At the Palace, that means 1, do not exert effort on mile 1. Just ride the wave of excitement, smile and enjoy, and wonder how the efforts around us can really be running this fast. 2, during mile 1, while thinking fast, keep in mind we have to switch gears soon. 3, right after mile 1, we take a right. This is the point that the aforementioned effers realize this isn't a 1-mile race. So 4, after taking the turn, increase effort and think how many people you can pass before mile 2. Most people say latch on to someone. At Palace, it's pass, since most people go out too fast and fade. Latching on won't work unless someone else is running a strong cut down. 5, don't think of mile 3 while running the second mile. Just pass. 6, plan on wanting to either quit or poop yourself at the mile 2 marker or both. Once there, just get to the bottom of the hill at 2.2-ish. Palace, by the way, there's a big hill at the very end, if you guys did not already gather that. Number 7, at the bottom of the hill, say F it and just see how many people you can pass going up. At the top of the hill, think I'm a sprinter and sprint. And that was your thoughts, plans, hopes, aspirations, fears, etc. for the Palace 5K. And it went beautifully for us. I think that hindsight 2020, you and I both thought like we probably could have gone a little faster, but had a great negative split for each mile, even with the hill at the end. And I think your strategy for the 5K is really brilliant on all fronts. Whether you've got hit, whatever the course may be, it's essentially mile 1. Understand that it's essentially adrenaline, and you're going to feel like you're going slow. Mile 2 is where a lot of your training comes in, and you begin to push and like feel that training in that mile 2. And then mile 3 is just grit and your continued training, obviously. But like really, mostly it's just we've just got to get it done, and this is just going to hurt, and that's okay. I think that if anything, that's kind of the side effect of the mental training that's been built over your training block. So what are your thoughts on your own advice that you've given?
Well, I would like to take authorship of that, but that's been stolen from many people I've read about. I read their
You're such a lawyer.
blogs. Yes, but no, it's everybody's different, but it definitely works for me. I can tell you, in the past, through trial and error, I would make a goal based upon my watch. I'd go out at the first mile, and then when I take that right turn, right at 1.2, I would start tidying up, and a couple runners would pass me, and they always ended up having really good times. And that's when I learned you need to be the person passing at the turn, not the guy being passed. And even if you go out 10 seconds too slow, you can make it up.
Right. For mile training, where is it different?
Ooh, okay. Now, mile training,
Which is what we are deep in right now.
yes, it's in my opinion, you have to go by the clock there, especially at the beginning, because the danger is you go out too fast. And but after the first 600, the clock is irrelevant, because at least for me, because I'm hurting so bad I can't do math anymore.
Yeah.
It's just the lactic acid comes, and I'm just happy to remember to take a left turn instead of a right.
Yeah.
It's a bad day when you take a right turn.
On the mile track. So the strategy for the mile is just time for the first 600 and then just send it. Hang on.
Everything I've read
until
says that if you go out too fast on the first lap, it's going to cost you on the second and third. So you have to be controlled on the first, and then after that, it's the training. I mean, it's not pleasant, it's not easy, but if you train for it, it should be doable.
I'm so scared for this mile race, Danny.
But it's over with so quick. That's the difference. I mean, a 5K,
But it feels so long.
I'm not
in the
disagreeing
moment.
with that. Yeah, it's definitely it's a more compressed amount of pain in a short period of time.
And I know you've done this before, but to me, it's so right now, our last training session was 4x400. We did 2 blocks of those. So, and in between each 4x400, we had a 10-minute break. Between each 400 in the 4x400 blocks, we had about a minute 15. And you're running each 400 at mile pace a little bit faster, really. And you want to have kind of that steady cut down like you want to mimic in the mile. First lap should be good. Second and third mile should be a little bit faster and held. And fourth mile is just, you just freaking go. And you just see God a little bit. But to me, running those times, I have no idea how I would possibly be able to hit those times for 4 consecutive laps in a row. And you and Gary have talked about how it actually is possible, and at least within like 1 or 2 seconds off per lap. So there might be a potential slowdown that occurs, but overall, like based on the training in the next 5 weeks, you should be able to kind of tie a bow on those 4x400s and string it into 1 mile. I have no idea how that's supposed to happen.
Well, that's the hope, right? But I mean, you've done it. I mean, you run that workout. You've run 8 400s, and
Yeah.
the 400, 3 and 4, and then 7 and 8. You're running them with really heavy legs, with a high heart rate. So it's not like you're doing it fresh. That's the key of the short recovery. So you have entered in the level of discomfort that you'll have in the race.
Yeah.
And you're also doing it after weeks of training without any type of recovery or
Yeah.
long-term recovery like tapering,
Yeah.
where your legs will be fresh. So it does. I mean, all the folks that trained for it in the past under Gary, almost everybody's hit their goals or near their goals based on how they ran those 400s. And then, because he's going to increase it to 600s and then 800s and
That
other
literally
variations.
makes my stomach hurt. It makes my stomach hurt to think about the workout. When it comes to the mile and stringing together into the 5K, because I've been thinking about this as I've been approaching my end of year stuff that I want to get done. One of my end of 2026 goals was to get a sub 19 5K. But I'm thinking, depending on my mile time, obviously this kind of depends, but depending on my level of fitness too, because obviously every day is different, and the mile just, sometimes it's just not there that day. There's a chance. I feel like there's a chance I could get a sub 19 5K before the end of this year, because that's running a 6:07.
I'll let you do the math.
I think I mathed that math.
Yeah, that sounds right. Well, if a 6:26 is a sub 20, so you'd be a 6:06 would be a sub 19.
Yeah.
And it's definitely doable. You just did the 2 mile cut down in a sub. What'd you go?
6:03 and 5:56.
That's on a hot, hilly course after a 3 mile warm up. That seems like that's definitely doable.
When was the last time you went sub 19? Have you gone sub 19?
Sub 20. In my car on the way here, I'm pretty sure I went sub 19.
Whatever, dude.
No, my PR is a 1948-ish.
When did you run that? At Palace?
Yes, 2 years ago.
Okay. Steph is the one who was close to breaking recently. She got like a 1910, I think. Or a 19... Steph's the one who got low 19s.
Not sure.
At Sickle Cell last year, I think. Your next is the marathon.
After the mile, yes.
How is that transition going to go for you?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it, because the transition is just to be building miles and it'll be a different type of workout. So it'll be nice to switch gears and go from focusing on speed and the clock to putting focus on getting more strength and more distance.
What will your week start looking like? Tuesday still track speed day?
The plan is to, once we get into training, like a 16-week plan, keep the Tuesday interval session, but convert it from 12 laps to probably like 18 laps. I'm going to defer to Gary on that.
Go earlier or stay later?
Yeah, and so
just
it'll
slow the reps down a little bit.
Instead of at a 5K pace, increase the distance, so it's probably more like a 10K pace, 10K effort, because you don't really need 5K speed at that point.
Thursday will be more threshold work, longer distance.
Right, and then Saturday's typically the real deal. That's the training session that counts.
Yeah. Jeez. And then a lot of just extra miles on top of miles.
Yeah, but I'm more of a low miles probably trainer. If you look at what people...
When you were training for your marathon last time, what was your weekly looking like?
I'd have to go back and look. I can't remember, but probably in the high 30s. I don't think I really did much more than that. No.
Okay.
Because I do a lot of...
That's so interesting. It's so crazy how varying people will be, because I know one of my friends, Alec, he ran a 2:48 at Grandma's, and I mean his weekly mileage was probably something along in the 40, maybe 40-ish, like low 40s. But then you have somebody like Katie, and she ran a 250 at Grandma's, and she was in the 60s, 70s for weekly mileage. So it's interesting the arguments toward in the different clubs of higher volume versus lower volume in terms of training weeks, training for marathons.
It seems the higher volume makes sense, but for me, I've had, I think, 3 knee surgeries over the years.
So it doesn't make sense for you?
The doctor's point was obviously running, it keeps you healthy, it keeps you leaner, which is good for your knees. But on the other hand, you've had a lot of your shock absorbers removed, the cartilage through surgery. So let's not overdo the miles. So that's kind of why I've always put the governor at probably being in the lower miles and using cross training on the off days to recover.
Would you have a marathon goal?
Yes, I would like to get under a 3:30 at the Tallahassee.
Okay.
And my goal is not to do as poorly as last time.
What was your last time?
I ran a very good marathon through the first 17 miles.
And then what
Unfortunately,
happened?
the marathon did not stop at the 17th mile. We'll just leave it with, I would have taken my bib off and thrown it had my family not been waiting at the finish line.
Really? Do you think it was a nutrition thing? Do you think it was just I was hurting so bad thing? Was it just an in your head thing?
No, it was about 20 degrees warmer than we had been training. If you look at all my long runs, the ambient or the average temperature the day of the race was warm.
Yeah.
And I did not adjust enough for it. And that's when by the time it hit me, it was too late to adjust. I couldn't adjust at mile 17.
That freaking sucks.
Yeah. So, but that's okay. It's not a failure. It's just an opportunity to learn more that, oh, by the way, if it's a lot hotter you've been training in, you got to make some adjustments.
What would you have adjusted?
My pace.
Started slower.
Right. I mean, I was out there pacing as if it was 43 degrees, not 68 degrees. And temperature and humidity is a real thing, especially when you haven't been training in it. So
when you're training, what would you say to how helpful having training partners is for training for races like the 5K and the mile?
It depends upon who the partners are. So
yeah, people like Abigail, it is just a pain in the butt, and I hate it. But
we are so blessed here. We have such a great running community, and
100%.
Obviously, it's great to have accountability to know somebody's there waiting for you. But everybody here is so nice, and I've learned so much. There's not a runner that I've run with that I haven't learned something. Everybody has such a wealth of knowledge, and they're good people. And it's just, especially on the long runs, it's just nice to talk with positive people about, interesting topics. Yeah. And in the track, though, it's all about having people with you.
Yeah, it's so interesting, that you said that, because on the long runs, it's like those are the people where it's just like that community is so helpful it's like hangout time. But then at the track, it's like having that community so helpful because it's not hangout time, it's work time. And doing all that work by yourself freaking sucks. Like Tuesday track days, I can do by myself. I can pull out, some hard 5K effort or slightly faster than 5K effort paces, But that mile training by yourself, I've had to do those workouts also by myself. And that is different. Like trying to hit... do 10 300s with minimal rest at, 5 minute, a little bit less than 5 minute race pace. Like, it's just brutal.
Yeah, there's a reason. If you watch on the blogs or the YouTubes, the pros, they do their speed work typically with groups. I think whether it's Misery Loves Company or when you watch other people and realize that what you're doing is not impossible. Or I
think it's all.
Or you just don't want to quit in front of other people. Or
I think it's all. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's the ego plus the support simultaneously.
Sure.
Plus the Misery Loves Company. Hey, let's all suffer together situation. Why do you keep running?
I love it. It's just always been my release. My favorite thing are the long runs where you can just think and without any type of outside clutter getting in the way.
Where do you think, like, you don't get the stress? Because there's people that don't run, right? That are like, I do other things to relieve stress. What do you think it is about the running for you that allows you to think, clear your head, relieve stress?
I think 1, you're outside, and 2, you're not in your house where you see things or your office that triggers thoughts of projects or work or whatever. You're out in nature and you're breathing. So it could be meditative. It could be all those things. And then all the scientific, stuff that you would understand that I don't about the
and not scientific and woo woo.
Yeah. The dopamines.
That doesn't, but it also, there's stuff that doesn't make sense, scientifically speaking, but you have enough anecdotal evidence where it's just like, this doesn't really have to make sense. It just is the way that I feel.
Yeah, it's always been that way for me.
Have you had any like really powerful insights on runs that you can remember, like 1 or 2, or very powerful moments on a run that you can remember?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of times and typically it's on the easy runs. The threshold runs, no, there's no meaningful brain.
No, my brain just shuts off a little bit, yeah.
There's a lot of crying, not a lot of thinking. No, but on the easy long runs, when I do litigation, I have formulated opening arguments and what I'm going to present to the court or a jury, or if I'm writing a brief. It's like my brain really enjoys that ability to think without being in the office. But or as simple as, raising kids. I've had some aha moments out there running when I'm thinking about my sons over the years.
Trying to better parent them, to relate to them, to
I don't try to relate to my kids. It's not going to happen. But
trying to empathize with.
No, all joking aside.
Screw that.
Trying to be a better parent, a better husband, whatever it may be. You do have ability to think when you're out there running, which is enjoyable.
Well, thanks, Danny, for coming on this podcast. Thanks. Also, we joke around and I give you a lot of crap all the time, but I really seriously, like, you've been invaluable in terms of helping me with the 5K, with the mile, with giving me knowledge, insight into those things, being able to show up and train with me, having very, very, what I would say is scary, but also for you, it's just realistic goals for me. And you have pushed me to push me actually a little bit harder in terms of understanding where I should really be falling in some of my goals. So I very much appreciate you having you as a training partner. And thank you for coming on this podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, and ditto that. And thank you for keeping my hamstrings and calves healthy.
I know I got to annoy you on the trails for many years to come.
Done. Check.
Yeah. All right. Bye, you guys.